Hello, my name is Jedrick Regala-Zoblin, and this is my film review of The Basketball Diaries, which is a movie based on the novel by Jim Carroll, focusing on his life as a drug addict in his adolescent years. A main thing I thought was interesting was how this is a personal account of his experiences, basically his cause of addiction, his path to addiction, and his recovery. I think it was really interesting to see a firsthand account of those experiences and really get an understanding, through his own lens. An overview of the movie, once again, it's based off the autobiographical novel, the same name by Jim Carroll, who's pictured on the right, and was released in 1995 and is an English film made in the United States, and it was directed by Scott Calvert. So the main actors are Leonardo DiCaprio, who plays Jim, Mark Wahlberg, who plays Mickey, James Madio, who plays Pedro, and Patrick McGaugh, who plays Neutron. There's an overall summary of the movie. Jim is a Catholic school basketball player who is dreaming of playing in college and pursuing his passion as a writer. Jim and his friends Mickey, Pedro, and Neutron are portrayed as rebellious. They do basically borderline illegal activities. They enjoy basically doing risky behaviors because it's fun. And he gets introduced to drugs through his friends and through his environment, basically because of the people he surrounds himself with. And his life begins to spiral as he drops out of school and he gets kicked out of his home for drug dealing. As his addiction grows, he goes against his own morality to get the drugs he craves for because his biological dependence on the drugs makes him want them more and more. And with the lack of money, he has to do more, basically steal, sell himself into prostitution, a lot of different things. Eventually, he gets arrested and is sent to prison where he recovers. And the movie finishes with him performing his poetry to an applauding crowd. Some central themes in the movie, first off, is the ease of starting an addiction. It's really shown that he was able to start his addiction very quickly and very fast. The main part of the movie they talked about was how Jim started taking drugs on a Saturday, and then he started taking them Saturday, Tuesday, and then he started taking them every single day. So what used to be just a once a time thing became a constant, frequent activity. And even though he thought he could stop it, he wasn't able to because of that biological dependence. Another thing, once again, is the power of drugs over people. Jim has a biological dependence on these drugs, and they really change how he views different things and how he approaches his life because of his focus on basically fixing his cravings. Also, there shows the need of support for drug users. Jim lacks a support system in his life. Although his mother is there, he's not really there to help him in the ways he needs help. His religion doesn't help him because he feels taken out because no one can help him recover in his own way. And his friends, in a way, also make his drug addiction worse because he's surrounding himself by drug addiction. Once again, talking about his environment, the environment in this movie is shown to be really important. Jim lives in a low income community surrounded by crime and drug usage. So because of that, he's unable to really recover because everyone around him is a drug user. And that makes it hard for him to basically find a way out since he's surrounded by it so much. Now we're talking about the portrayal of addiction and the addict. There's a main focus on the drug itself and how that impacts addiction. It really takes an approach of blaming the drug rather than the person. It's shown that drug users have no control due to the power of the drugs over their brain. Jim is shown to have really strong cravings and really strong withdrawal symptoms. So it's really hard for him to even like basically understand his own addiction and get past it because his body is actually hurting physically and he needs drugs to help him just feel normal. A main part of the movie I thought was really interesting was when they got kicked out of school, his friend Mickey, instead of focusing on getting kicked out of school, he was stressed that their drugs were confiscated when they got kicked out of school. So it shows once again this shifting of priorities due to these cravings and due to their dependence on drugs. Drug usage is overall vilified in the movie. It shows Jim basically going from powerful to powerless. In the bottom right, it shows Jim on his highest of highs, basically feeling like he can like take over the world. Basically, it's a scene where he shoots people in his class that he doesn't like. And then later on in the movie, it shows it's a basically a dream of him getting shot. So I think that just shows the imagery where now instead of being the person in control, he is now the person out of control. Another thing too, it just shows Jim and his friends committing more and more crimes to fix their drug usage, just overall vilifying the drug. Like the drug is forcing them to do these things because they physically need it. Jim is like forced to bend his morality. He steals, he robs. A main part of the movie is how he sells himself into prostitution. And in the beginning of the movie, when he was asked to go into prostitution by his coach, he was violently against it. He threw his coach into a wall, and now he's forced himself to be a prostitute just so he can fix his cravings. So it just shows how the insensitivity to cost he's experiencing, like he's willing to do more and more because he really needs the drugs to basically make him feel normal. Now, just this movie also focuses on the environment that Jim lives in. There's a lot of environmental stressors in Jim's low-income community. He faces abuse in his Catholic school by the pastors there and also by his coach. Jim's friend dies early in the movie, and then he experiences a lot of trauma from that. And also, he's overall unsatisfied with his home, school, and life in general. And all these different stresses basically make him more um, easily able to do drugs because he's needing to find a way to cope. He doesn't have that basically system around him to help him so he can cope in a healthy way. So he turns to drugs to help him feel better in times of stress. Once again, due to Jim's low income community, he's surrounded by drug usage and drugs, which makes it easy for him and his friends to turn to drugs, and it's so normalized in his community. And also just how these lower income communities are constantly experiencing drug usage. And so it's not just something that happens within this movie, it goes beyond this. There's so many communities, around the country that are facing these struggles because of drug usage being rampant in those communities. And overall, as talked about before, he doesn't have that support system in his community that can really help Jim basically stop doing drugs and also basically prevent him from doing drugs in the first place. Although he has these places where he's supposed to feel safe, he's supposed to feel comfortable, like his school, his home, he's unable to because of his environment. And this makes it just easier for him to turn to drugs and makes it even harder for him to stop his addiction because he doesn't have that support system in his life to help him. Now we're going to focus on Jim as a character himself. Jim is portrayed as a good person at heart. He's caring of his friend who has leukemia. He comes and visits him at the hospital, and at the same time, he makes sure that everyone cares for that friend as well. However, Jim is portrayed as a delinquent who's willing to do bad activities. And I think that just wrongfully stereotypes drug users as a whole. Like, you can't use Jim's experience as a monolith for all drug users' experiences because not all drug users have or will commit crimes, Jim has. And I think it's just unfair to show them in this light to say that, oh, drug users were doing crimes in the past. That's why it's so easy for them to do drugs now. And drug users are so dependent on their drugs. That's why they're willing to commit crimes. And I think that just wrongfully stereotypes them and makes basically criminalizing them instead of actually putting them as real people who want help and want to recover. Now, I talk about the portrayal of recovery. It focuses really hard on the biological dependence of the drug. Reggie, who is like an older figure for Jim, is trying to help him recover, but Jim is physically in pain and unable to recover. The withdrawals are so intense, he's kicking and screaming, and he's in actual pain. And it just shows how hard it is to recover. However, I do think the end of the movie where Jim is able to fully recover really simplifies the process of recovery and wrongfully stereotypes it, in my opinion, as easy. Jim literally monologues about his recovery, like his 6-month recovery, basically saying that he had like a strong will and he was able to basically not do drugs in that system, even though there was drugs in that prison. And I think it's unfair to portray like drug usage and recovery like this because it's not easy, as we've seen in the class. And drug users do face many struggles and many obstacles, and to make it seem like it's that easy really invalidates their experiences and invalidates the struggles that they're facing. Just an overall evaluation of the movie. I think the movie did properly present the main themes because it did show Jim experiencing all these different struggles. It showed his causes of his addiction, his path to addiction, and overall his recovery. And it just shows how his environment impacted him, how the drug itself impacted him, and how these all forced him to do different things. But I think overall, it's not an accurate representation of drug usage. It is an accurate representation of Jim Carroll's drug usage and recovery, but this shouldn't be used as like a monolith for all drug users because this is a really specific story. And I feel like if other people saw this, they might think that all drug users are like this and all drug users have these experiences, which is not true because everyone is different. Everyone has different experiences. I think a main thing too is just the portrayal of crime by drug users to buy drugs. Not all drug users are going to do that. And I think if maybe some people saw this movie, they might think, oh, that's what all drug users do. And I think that's unfair to them because not is basically once again criminalizing them and making them not be seen as people. And I think another thing too is the speed and ease of Jim's recovery. I feel like that's unfair once again because recovery isn't easy, and to make it seem like it was that easy, literally in a 2 or 3 minute monologue, it's just unfair to their struggles. Overall, I do recommend because it does show the experiences and struggles of one person, and it's valuable to understand their experiences. However, I think whoever watches this should come with that thought in mind that this is an experience of only one person, not every single drug user, and really really analyze the movie and really make sure they're not feeding into everything. Perhaps using this movie as one example and then trying to understand more through other movies or through other books or through just like online articles. I think that would be really helpful. But overall, I think it's a good movie and it really shows the experiences of one person in an accurate light. Thank you once again, and this is the end of my film review. Overall, I give it a B- grade. I think it's a very powerful movie that shows really important themes on drug usage, drug addiction, and how one's environment impacts that, and also how the drug itself impacts people physically, mentally, and impacts how they basically are able to approach their life and their society. I think although it should be looked at within the lens that this is Jim Carroll's story once again, and should be used as one example of the instead of the experiences of many different people.